Buenas, buenas, buenas. I'm Vanessa, the host of Chicklet, a podcast where I share my honest reviews of books that I think Latinas, women, first gens, and millennials would enjoy. Please subscribe and follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, and YouTube at Chicklet Podcast. And enjoy today's episode on the book, The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. There are 336 pages in the book. The genres are mystery, fiction, suspense, crime, and psychological thriller. The writing style is in first person from Theo's point of view and also Alicia's when we're reading her diary, where she tells the story of the weeks leading up to her husband Gabriel's death. The way that it's written is very current and relatable. For example, I became a psychotherapist because I was fucked up. Like, that's not something that you generally read in books where the person who's speaking or the narrator is so personable and relatable. So it kind of reminds me of Matt Haig's writing, where it's very millennial and it's like a super chill vibe. The Silent Patient was the author's debut novel. It's a New York Times and Sunday Times bestseller with over 6.5 million copies sold. Brad Pitt's production company, Plan B, is developing The Silent Patient as a film. You already know. I want to be invited to opening night. I want to be there on the red carpet. I want to talk about the book. I want to talk about the film and also talk about my podcast. And so send positive vibes that this is going to happen for me. Thank you. Um, Michaelides, the author, was born in Cyprus to a Greek father and English mother. He studied psychotherapy for 3 years and worked for 2 years at a secure unit for young adults. This work provided material and inspiration for today's book. He also wrote the film The Devil You Know, starring Lena Olin, Rosamund Pike, and Jennifer Lawrence, and co-wrote The Con Is On, starring Uma Thurman, Tim Roth, Parker Posey, and Sofia Vergara. He says, I made 3 films and they went from bad to worse. After meeting someone at a party who told him that, having seen one of the films, I didn't expect you to be so interesting, he decided to give up on films and focus on writing novels instead. I guess he didn't like his work as a film writer or a writer for films. So now we have novels. So fun. So let's get into lo bueno. This book is about a psychotherapist, Theo, who gets hired at a mental health secure unit for people who have committed crimes. Theo himself has had a really hard life. His dad was physically abusive to him. His mom stayed and didn't protect him. So he spends his life trying to get through his childhood and kind of leave it in the past and process it. He tried to unalive himself when he was in college. I feel like every single book that I've been doing lately talks about suicide in one way or another. So I'm hoping that the next book that I read does not have suicide in it, because this is not on purpose. Like, I had no idea. I didn't know that suicide was like in so many books. So Theo spends, I think it was something like 6 years in therapy with a really sweet elderly therapist named Ruth, who encourages him to be fulfilled and make the best decisions for himself. Through her, he internalized a new kind of relationship with another human being, one based on mutual respect, honesty and kindness, not anger or violence like he was used to in his past. She encouraged him to stop reliving his childhood and accept that he's worthy of good things. She gave him an example of what a healthy relationship looks like. And I feel like my relationships with my therapists in the past have done the same thing, where they kind of show you that a healthy relationship is possible, that you are capable of being in a healthy relationship. And so Theo gets that from this therapist. It's like, okay, I can go move on and be healthy in my future relationship. So we kind of understand why he feels drawn to one of the patients at his new job, Alicia. Alicia was in this unit and has not spoken. She's the silent patient since before she murdered her husband. She was a painter. Gabriel, her husband, was a good man, and no one knows why she killed him. Her brother-in-law didn't know, her cousin, the neighbor, her good friend. None of the therapists at this institution knew. So that's why Theo comes in and is trying to work with her and figure out why she's not speaking and why she murdered Gabriel. This book reminds me a lot of The Murder Mystery. It's a movie. It's on Netflix. You should watch it. It's with Jennifer Aniston and Adam Sandler, and they go onto a boat and there's a murder, and it's the whole movie is about like who killed them. And I think more people also die. I don't know. But the point is that like it's a whodunit movie and it's super fun, it's super light. And while today's book is not fun or light at all, it's that similar vibe of every single time a character is introduced, we're wondering, did they kill Gabriel or did they frame Alicia, or what role do they play in Gabriel's murder? So every single person that I just mentioned, you're like, did you do it? Did you do it? Did you do it? Just like in the murder mystery with Jennifer Aniston and Adam Sandler. So go watch it because that one's fun. So while Theo is working with Alicia, he used his time with his therapist as a starting point for his time as being a therapist to Alicia. He says, a patient delegates his unacceptable feelings to his therapist, and she holds everything he is afraid to feel, and she feels it for him. Then, ever so slowly, she feeds his feelings back to him. As Ruth, his therapist, fed his back to him. So you start to respect his work as a therapist because he sees Alicia's in pain. He sees her violence as a way of communication. He sees her silence as a way of communication, and you see them progress as therapist and patient as well. Um, Alicia responds to Theo non-verbally and even gives him her diary for him to read. Very early on, he starts to break the rules when treating Alicia. The first professional transgression was contacting everyone who knew Alicia, all of the people that I just listed before, and meeting them one by one to learn more about Alicia. He didn't get this approved by his supervisor, he just went ahead and did it. And of course, because he's a guy, he did not get reprimanded at all, and it was totally fine and everything's all cool. Whereas like I feel like if a woman were to go beyond her scope, a woman would get reprimanded and written up and all terrible things would happen to her. So in this book, this guy can just do whatever he wants and everything's cool. It's all good. He's a guy. He can do whatever he wants. Awesome. So he meets up with her brother-in-law, Max, and turns out he had been in love with her. He tried to get with her, and she cared too much for her husband to break his heart and tell him that his older brother, Max, was betraying him by trying to get with Alicia, his wife. So we're left to think that the brother-in-law actually killed the brother in order to be with Alicia. The brother-in-law's wife is also aware of him loving Alicia and is somehow okay with it. I don't really know. Theo she also gave Theo a hint to talk to Alicia's cousin, Paul. I don't know how she knew to point him in that direction, but she did. So, and honestly, we don't really learn throughout the book how she knew, but she's like, go talk to Paul. And he's like, okay. So he goes and he talks to Paul. Turns out Paul had asked Alicia for money to pay off his gambling problem, and he was caught lying to Theo about whether or not she gave him money. So we're kind of made to believe that his gambling and his money problems had to do with Gabriel being murdered. Maybe it was whoever he owed money to coming to collect the money and killing Gabriel in the process. But Paul actually ends up giving us the most information about Alicia's childhood. He shares that when Alicia's mom tried to suicide herself, and Alicia, again, why suicide? Why is there so much suicide? But she tried to suicide herself and Alicia, but she was only successful in committing suicide. She's the only one that died. And it turns out that Alicia's dad made it very clear that he was upset that Alicia wasn't the one that died. So that's very traumatizing, and she obviously carries that with her for the rest of her life. She even says to her cousin, like, he killed me when he said that. And so, yeah, it's just fucked up. Like, her life is terrible this whole time. We also learn about Theo also goes and meets Alicia's good friend, John Felix. I think that's his name. He was running her art studio, and we're made to believe that he framed her because he wanted to sell her paintings or use the studio as a way for him to make money. Or maybe he was secretly in love with her and wanted to be with her. We're really not sure what the motives are, and like the whole time we're really trying to figure out what could be the motive here, right? We also meet Alicia's neighbor, Barbie. She's very conveniently named Barbie because she's superficial and fits the stereotype or whatever image you have of a woman named Barbie. She shared that Alicia had told her that she saw a man who was spying on her, and that when Barbie tried to tell the cops, no one would listen to her. All they wanted to do was blame Alicia for the murder. And we started to think that the stranger who was spying on Alicia had something to do with the murder, whether he's framing Alicia or he killed the husband and Alicia's being blamed for it. And, that's why she's not speaking and being silent, because no one's believing her, no one's hearing her. The whole time we aren't really sure if she did it or not, because when reading her diary, we learn how much she loved her husband. When she's painting when she's painting a painting of Jesus, she realizes that Jesus's face is actually Gabriel's face, her husband, and she says, "He saved me, like Jesus. Maybe that's what the painting is about. Gabriel is my whole world." So we're like, wait, if she loved him so much, did she kill him? And if so, why? And if not, then who? We're confused the entire time about it. And we also get hints that she's afraid of her husband. It turns out that she was kind of hesitant to tell him that there was a guy spying on her. And he didn't even try to believe her when she did eventually tell him. So when he suggested that she go see a therapist, because obviously she's going crazy according to him, the therapist is trying to give her drugs and trying to um, tell her that she's crazy, basically. She didn't want to rock the boat, so she pretends to take the medicine but doesn't actually take the medicine. So it's like, is she afraid of him? Is that why she's not sticking up for him? Is that why she's going behind his back and pretending to take the medicine? Is he abusing her in some way? Did he have something to do with his own death? There's like a lot of questions. While all of that is going on, we're also getting side little pockets of Theo's personal life. It turns out that his wife was having an affair on him, and he loved her too much and was too damaged from his abusive childhood to confront her and possibly lose the only good thing in his life. So he decides to take matters into his own hands. He starts to follow his wife to where her and her lover would meet, and eventually starts to follow the guy home too. Turns out that the guy that his wife was cheating on him with was also married. He's also cheating on his wife with Theo's wife. So Theo decides that he needs to show the man's wife that her husband is cheating and starts to follow her too, eventually breaking into her home, tying her up, and leaving it up to the husband to decide if he or his wife will live. And the husband ultimately decides that he wants to live. So he basically kind of says, like, I don't want to die. So it leaves Theo to decide if he's going to kill his wife or not. So Theo leaves the couple alone and doesn't kill either one of them. And that's when the wife picks up the gun and shoots Gabriel. Theo is the one that was following Alicia. Theo's wife was cheating on him with Gabriel, Alicia's husband. And he's the one who showed Alicia that Gabriel didn't love her as much as she loved him, just like Alicia's dad didn't love her as much as he loved her mother. So that's why she decides to kill Gabriel. He literally put her in that situation, gave her the gun, and she also was in this heightened fear. Well, first of all, he had tied her up and like kidnapped her essentially, and then left her alone with a gun with a husband that just said that he didn't love her that much. Theo, what did you think was gonna happen? What did you think was gonna happen? And Theo also didn't know at that time, he didn't know anything about Alicia's parents. That's why. Right. So he didn't, when Theo left her with the gun at her home, he didn't realize that she was unstable and that she was also struggling because of what happened with her mom and how her dad didn't really love her that much. And so that's why he wanted to become her therapist, to kind of figure out, like, why did she do it, like what brought her to do this. And it's like, bruh, you literally like put her in this situation. He's obviously unwell. And so after we find out that Theo was actually the one stalking her, so now that we know what happened, we realize that throughout the book, the author was leaving ominous clues and made us think that Alicia was the murderer. And now we realize those clues are actually more geared toward Theo having something to do with the murder. For example, they mention his first professional transgression, but really going back, we realized that that was not his first transgression toward her. That was the first professional one, but not the first transgression. The first one was like stalking her and following her and all the terrible things that he did. There's also a quote in the book by Freud. It's unexpressed emotions will never die. They're buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways. So we are made to believe that that has to do with Alicia and her childhood, and that's why she killed her husband. But really, it's Theo's childhood, having him go through the lengths that he went through to save his marriage and show this woman that her husband was cheating on her because he was sleeping with Theo's wife. So, really fucked up. And in the middle of the book, he says that he was also perfectly able to remain objective about her, stay vigilant, tread carefully, and keep firm boundaries. He said he was wrong. It was already too late, though he wouldn't admit it even to himself. And we think it's too late because he's so invested and he's cares about her and he's such a good therapist and he's gonna get to the bottom of it. But really, he can't be objective and he can't tread carefully. He can't be vigilant. He can't keep firm boundaries because he has something to do with the murder. It was such a mess. And like in the end, Theo realizes that Alicia figured out that Theo was the masked man who stalked her the whole time and tied her up and put her in the position to be in with. So Theo tries to silence her by injecting her with a morphine shot, just enough that she won't ever wake up again, but also won't kill her. And he gets caught in the last couple of paragraphs in the book. And that's how the book ends, is him getting caught. It's her writing in her notebook saying that, Theo he's the murderer. He's not the murderer. Theo was the one that kidnapped me and he just gave me a shot and I feel it hitting me now. And, someone has to find this. And so she puts it in her paintings for her friend, Jean-Felix, to find and show the cops. And he does. And the cops find him and he's caught. So the malo of the episode is I was anxious the entire time, and not in like a scared anxious, but kind of like suspense. I think suspense is a really good word for it because of the suspense. And I don't really like that. I'm not really into being suspenseful. I'm not really into suspenseful things. I'm not really into being anxious. I'm already pretty anxious on my own. I don't need a book to make me even more anxious. We also, throughout the book, because we're reading it through Theo's perspective, we're really made to fear Alicia when the whole time Theo knew that he was the reason why, or he had something to do with her being a murderer. So I don't really like that. I don't really like when books make us hate women. Like, I feel like society already does that enough. Like, I'm good on that, but that was, to me, one of the no malo things. There's also a lot of things left unanswered. We don't really know why Max, Gabriel's brother, we don't really know why his wife is afraid of him. Why did she know about Alicia's dad saying that he wished that she'd die instead of Alicia's mom? Or we don't really know what was up with John Felix or Barbie. Like, all of these characters, it's just like left open. But I guess maybe finding out that Theo has something to do with it is what closes the door a little bit. I'm not really sure. But that's really it for today's episode. The next episode will be on A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. That's the second book of the Court of Thorns and Roses series. Feel free to listen to that episode for a refresher. That was posted on November 17th. If you liked this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. New episodes are uploaded on Monday mornings. I'm posting daily videos on YouTube recapping my everyday life. And you can also follow me on social media at Chicklet Podcast. And remember, if you have any book recommendations or want to be on the episode, let me know. Thank you for listening. Bye.